In the view here, you see some commercial patterns for bitty baby dolls and one for 18-inch dolls. And I want to show you something. This is a Simplicity 1952 OS for 15-inch baby doll clothes. Now, there are two versions of this pattern, and I bought both of them. You basically get the same things. Now this does not say OS. This is 1952. So you see a backpack, a few outfits. When you get the OS version, you also get knitted and crocheted sweater patterns. And it looks like a blanket. I haven't opened it yet. It says free knit and crochet projects. So you might want to look for the 1952 OS. And what I was looking for here, I've been making just simple jackets, and I started with the Nellie B weaving loom jackets, and then I was making bunny things, and I want to make my 15-inch bitty baby doll a jacket. So there are shirts here and knit and crochet sweaters on that special version. There isn't really a jacket. Now here's another one. This is by McCall's. Another cute one. I don't know what the number is on this. Oh, here it is. M4338. And that's, again, cute little things that I guess if you made, well, the pants would go on either doll. This outfit here would be good for a boy doll. And then there's this one, which has the snowsuit, another kind of footed suit, overalls, no jacket, a cute stocking hat, no jacket. So what I've done, now this is the Simplicity 4297, which is for 18-inch dolls, and there are two jackets, and this looks very similar to what I had done, only the shoulders look to be more fitted than what I was doing. And there's a sweatshirt, but that's as close to a jacket as you can get, and obviously it's for an 18-inch doll and not a 15-inch doll. Now what I want to do is basically my Nellie B weaving loom woven sweater pattern in fabric for a 15-inch doll. Now what I could do is use this pattern and make the jacket for an 18-inch doll, and you know, it would just be a little bit big on a 15-inch doll. I think the arms are completely different, and what I have run into with all my patterns for the 15-inch doll, and you can probably see it on here, they have an area right here, the bitty baby dolls do, that is vinyl, and then when it goes to cloth, it's really bumpy and it's curved here. So this type of a style might run into the same thing that I've been running into, where when I made the jacket for the bunnies, it just wouldn't go over that curved vinyl arm. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to stick with my own pattern, and I'm going to use a 7-inch square, and it's going to leave the sleeves a little bit too long. But I'm going to work it up, and I have an idea for something to do with the sleeves. But what I would like to do is still have a 4-square jacket for a bitty baby doll. And then, if my sizing comes out right with this one, then if I wanted to weave it or make a knitted one, I could just make squares the same size as the templates I'm using today. Now, with an LEB weaving loom, you get a 6-inch square. But when you're finished, I'm trying to think what kind of an edge you get. You get, I think you crochet it off the loom the same way you do a pot holder. I had to stop and think for a minute. All you would have to do to make that square bigger is single crochet around the edge for a couple of rounds, and then you'd have a bigger square. I don't know if that will make it too bulky, and that's a little bit in the future. But today what I want to do is make one in fabric with the correct sizing for a 4 square simple jacket project for a 15-inch Bitty Baby doll. Now I'm going to use my 1937 Singer 1588 set up as a hand crank for this project, and I'm using the non-cam Zigzagger attachment. It's part number 160620, and it's a very simple zigzag attachment that doesn't take cams and pattern discs or wheels. There is another one that does. In fact, there's also a third one that mounts the machine left to right at the needle bar. But I'm using this one, which when it's on the machine, it's front to back. And this one is complete. The Zigzagger looks like this. Very simple. This is the regular presser foot that you can do zigzagging with, or attaching cord. There's a slot there for cording. This is an edge stitching foot that attaches to the top of it, and because this is wide, it has a special attachment screw for the presser bar. So if you buy one, you want to make sure that you have all of those pieces right there. The booklet, it's very simple to install, it's simple to use. I was going to use the horizontally mounted Zigzagger because it's a different kind of Zigzagger and I haven't used it very much. But you have to remove a couple of thread guides from some of the different straight stitch vintage models. And the book on that one does tell you what to change for what model. And I would have done that, except that I ran into a problem. I have a thread guide, a thread cutter in the back here that used to slide around all the time. So I actually put Loctite on it, and it doesn't move at all now. And part of mounting that other Zigzagger is moving this up if you can. Now, I'm hoping I won't run into the same thing with this one, but I don't think I will. So in a moment, I'm going to put this Zigzagger on the machine, and this area right here, you can, once this is on the machine, you just lift that up like that, and you're straight stitching. And you push it down and it's engaged the Zigzagger and you are zigzagging. So an attachment like this does not have to be taken off the machine, which is kind of a plus, as long as whatever project you're doing can go under the presser foot. Now, these vintage Zigzagger attachments move the fabric back and forth and not the needle. So I'll set up the camera and we'll put this on the machine. Okay, it's very simple to put the Zigzagger on the machine. The first thing you do is remove the presser foot that's on there. And again, this is a Singer 1588. It would be the same on, say, a 66 or a 99, a 185, basically any of the straight stitch vintage Singers. And this is going to fit on here similar to the flower foot that I did a video on the other day. This arm on this side has to go up over the needle bar clamp, the needle clamp, and this is the part that attaches to the needle bar. So you slide it in from the back, and in this case it has to actually go over the needle clamp screw. Not just sit on top of it, it has to fit over it. And then you take the longer screw they give you, it's very simple to put on here. And before you tighten it up, just make sure that you have it where it's supposed to be. And I think you can see in the view there, when the presser foot is up, that's quite a bit of clearance, but that's going to change as soon as I put the presser foot down. Now I'll just explain how you adjust the zigzagger for the width. You have to make sure that that lever toward the right is down to engage the zigzagger. You loosen this screw right here and move this in and out to change the, it's called the bite. Let me just see how they explain it. It's called the stitch regulator. Controls the width of the zigzag stitch. And then your stitch length setting, you would change both the width of the zigzag stitch. Having it all the way back like that is the widest, and that's the narrowest. And between adjusting that and your stitch length, that will change the different zigzag stitches that you can have. So it is on there, and I'll just show you how it's going to move fabric back and forth. And my thread is caught up there. For some reason, it was actually working fine. It's my thread. And I did check that I have a bobbin in there. So let's do this again. Now this will have a different feel to it than when you use a newer machine with a zigzagger that moves the needle. My spool of thread is all wrapped up here. There we go. I was just using this machine for something else, so this is like a bobbin issue, or the bobbin thread is just making a mess. There's my bobbin. It's on my bobbin thread, on my needle thread. Now, both of those times I had started it with the needle thread kind of sticking out the front instead of picking up the bobbin thread first. What the heck is happening? I have to check the machine. Well, that was kind of a worst case scenario kind of thing. I didn't have the bobbin case seated in there correctly. So what was happening was the bobbin thread was getting all wrapped around everything down underneath the machine. So what I'm going to do is tilt the machine back. Now, I'm letting you see this because it does actually happen. Can you see all of this? And a lot of times, if it really gets stuck in there, you can have a real problem getting it all out. And that looks like this looks like either some dust or a really old piece of thread. That may have been the problem to begin with. Now, I use this machine all the time, so obviously this happened once before and I didn't get all the thread out when I thought I did. So there, that is out now. And we'll put the bobbin back in. I did check that I had a full bobbin in there, and I probably just didn't put the case back in the right way. So now that shouldn't happen again. And I'm going to change this view just a bit. Now what's different with this kind of a zigzagger as opposed to one where the needle moves back and forth is that it is at times difficult to guide the fabric. The book on the zigzagger says to keep kind of a light tension so that the fabric can move as it needs to and so it doesn't pucker. But do you see how I have to kind of push it this way a little bit to keep it straight? So again, it's a different attitude in sewing compared to modern machines where you just let the machine almost do all of that. All you do is put the fabric underneath the presser foot and go. And if you move the fabric, like I did there, that will happen and you won't end up with a straight row anyway. But that is how it attaches to the machine, and that is how it operates. So let me try to go down the edge of the fabric I'm going to keep the left edge of the fabric, and this is just a test square, lined up with the left side of the foot. And you can see that I still have to push the fabric this way to keep it as straight as possible with the left edge lined up there. So this is a different way of looking at sewing. It's a different habit to get into. It's also very versatile, because once you get used to all of this and you are familiar with changing your zigzag stitches, my 237s have 4 widths of zigzag stitch. With this and changing the stitch length, I can get many more than 4 from this simple attachment. So there are advantages to them. But you will have to sometimes manipulate the fabric to keep something straight. Now, the reason that comes up, but you know, look at that. It's a beautiful hand-cranked zigzag stitch, as organic as you can get. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is, as you know, if you watch the other videos on these simple 4-square jackets, let me move him back out of the way. There are basically 4 pieces. There are 4 squares, and what is going to be the front square you cut in half. Now, what I've done with this one is make it a 7-inch square for the Bitty Baby doll. And here's where things get tight on the Bitty Baby doll. First of all, doing the front won't be a problem. So we'll do the front, we'll attach the front to the back at the shoulders, and then each of these side squares becomes the sleeves. So they get stitched there, and then you fold them like they ended up folded like that, and then you stitch here and down there. This right here is what just doesn't want to go on a Bitty Baby doll because of the curving of the vinyl, which is right here. So keeping that in mind, I did make the squares bigger. They're 7 inches square. But also, when I stitch the square to the front and back, which will go like that, I want to keep a very narrow 1/4 inch seam allowance here. When I stitch the bottom seam here, I want to keep everything to do with the sleeves at a very narrow 1/4 inch and in straight stitch. But where the zigzagger is going to come in, on the front pieces, what I'm going to do is fold this under along this edge and along this edge, a 1/4 inch, probably pin it in place, and then I'm going to go right down each of those with a zigzag stitch. I'm also going to hem the bottom a 1/4 inch and put a zigzag stitch there. So that's the first step, pressing each of these edges in a 1/4 inch, pressing it under, and then going down the front and across here with a zigzag stitch. This is also pressed under a 1/4 inch. Now on the bunny version of this, I did chain stitching with the chain of the stitch showing, but this time we're going to do zigzagging with the vintage Zigzagger. Now I didn't pin this, but I did press it, and I'm going in an L shape, starting at the bottom edge, zigzagging across the bottom, and then I'll go up the longer edge there. Now, this is where a hand crank can be used to an advantage. If you were doing this with an electric machine, it would be going faster, but with a hand crank, you can control exactly how fast this goes. And it does take practice, and I know I'm already going crooked. It takes practice to keep the fabric in a position that you want it to be. And when you get to a corner, what you do is leave the needle in the down position and pivot the fabric. Now, you see, that's a little bit crooked. And what you have to make sure is that you caught the raw edge all the way across the bottom. But this is what I'm trying to think of how what I'm trying to say. The actual skill in sewing comes in here, where it isn't your machine doing it, it's you doing it. And I think my fabric has opened up a little bit underneath. And that's why pinning it would have been maybe better for me to do, except that I'd be removing the pins when I got to the right here anyway. And I think this is why they start children out, or they did start children out with a Model 20 and a hand crank. Because even if there are difficulties with a Model 20 with some fabrics or some techniques, where the child develops their skill of sewing is controlling the hand crank and the speed. And then when you get to an electric machine, that skill transfers to what you've been doing anyway, keeping the fabric straight or manipulating the fabric, putting your skill into whatever the machine is doing for you. Your skill goes into the fabric or the way that your stitching is coming out. And it's something to think about for today's life. Because if you go look at Walmart or at Target or anywhere and find a child's sewing machine, it's going to have, a lot of them are like little cheap electrics with a little cheap plastic foot pedal, and you know, you push it and it goes, and you're not learning anything. except that that's what they go like. This you can also reverse with this attachment. And then you just pull it out the back the same way you would pull anything out. So my longer edge came out straighter than my short edge, and I did catch the raw edge all the way up. So that's good, and now I have to do another one. Now, what I'm going to do though, and I don't know why this is happening, I'm getting double bobbin threads. I'm using white thread, so you might be able to see. And you could add cording. If this is a very light pillowcase fabric, but if I had added cording and done that, it would make even a more special effect. But what I'm going to do, because I want to make sure that that seam allowance on the other side doesn't give out, I'm lifting that little lever on the right and I'm switching to straight stitch, and I'm going to go on the outside edge of my zigzag in a straight stitch. And so now my zigzagging is really the decorative, and the straight stitch is the functional that is going to keep anything from coming apart. Somehow the little thing got pushed down to start zigzag again. But now here I am going way off on the edge because I didn't pay attention for a second. So again, it's the skill of the sewing, no matter what your machine does for you. Now, because I reversed the zigzag stitch at the end there, there's a little bit of a lump. Now, the reason this is important, and the reason doll clothes are a wonderful reason, I mean, people should have a doll, if only for this. Because however this came out, and this edge is crooked here now with the straight stitch, and the zigzag is crooked down here. If I take this practice making it for a doll and then apply it to the next thing I make for myself, all of my practice is on the doll clothes, and my better stitches hopefully end up on the adult. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side of the front, going over the edges first with the zigzag stitch, and then secondly with a straight stitch to the outside of it. Now I'm going to show you this because it's easy to do. It's not one of my better moments. first of all, there is the zigzag, and I have the machine set at 30 stitches an inch, so you can't even really see the straight stitching. And this fabric I had used for a pair of pants for the bunny, and you can probably tell now this is the wrong side and that's the right side, and you have to always watch what you're doing as far as which way you're supposed to be folding seam allowances in, and which is the wrong side and which is the right side. Now granted, these are similar. I mean, there's not much of a difference. I was pressing them quickly, but this is the wrong side of the stitching I just did as well. So what I ended up with were two, they would actually be left on the doll, but they're the right side pieces for the pattern. So yep, I got out my seam ripper, and I will be, and this happens, and you have to do it. You realize you've made an error, and it's an error that will have one half of your jacket looking like it's inside out. So I'll be ripping all of that out, repressing the fabric, and doing it again. In other words, what I did was press the wrong edge. Now, I could leave it like that and just do this side correctly, but that is going to affect how the jacket actually fits. So, it's a lesson in sewing. Sometimes these happen, and I'll be ripping all of that out and redoing that side. So, the way to prevent that from happening, I ripped all the zigzag out, and then I got to the 30 stitches an inch, and couldn't even touch it, which is something to keep in mind. So I cut another piece. Luckily I had some spare fabric, and just did it correctly the second time. And to prevent that, I've got blue, yellow, purple. None of it shows up very clearly on all fabrics, so I'm going to get some more chalkboard chalk. White wouldn't really show up, but I think for my own personal thing, you see I've now put blue X's on the wrong sides, and I'm just going to do that because a long time ago when I first started sewing, that was like my one that was my one like pet peeve or thing that would happen to me and the worst times. Now, again, it's a good reason for everybody to have either a bunny or a doll or something, whether it's Barbie, Madeline, 6-inch dolls for 1/12 scale, something to sew for and practice, practice your sewing. Even, I've been sewing since I was 12, so that's well over 40 years of sewing, and you can still just be spacing out and forget or do it quickly and still have things happen. So marking the back is going to be again one of my priorities. So now the next step is to take the back piece, which is right here, and with the wrong side up, press just on one edge 1/4 inch over, and do the same thing on one edge of the back. And that way when it's stitched together you'll have the same bottom edge on both the front and the back. So just one bottom edge, one edge on the back square, and both zigzag and the straight stitch along one edge. And then the next step will be right sides together. They get stitched at the shoulders. Like that, here and over here. But first I need to turn under that edge correctly and do the same zigzag and straight stitching I've just done. Now I've gone ahead and stitched the back bottom And I have right sides together and pinned at the shoulders. So now what we have to do is stitch this at the shoulders, and on this one we may also turn the neck edge down. But when you're at this point and you're trying to fit a difficult doll, here's the Bitty Baby doll. So with it just pinned like that, if you want to see how far you have to stitch the shoulders, or how open to leave the neck. Now I have the pins just about in the center. I'd have to loosen them up a little bit. At this point you would put it on the doll. I would have to take those pins out and repin them. I'm pretty sure we're going to go in 1.5 inches, and that will leave enough of a neck edge. But if you're trying to size something for a doll for yourself, before you stitch it, you can pin it to the doll and then mark the fabric with how far in you want to go. So now I have it pinned at 1.5 inches in, and it doesn't sit quite correctly because it's not stitched. But this is where the narrow hem allowance on stitching the sleeves in, why this is important. Because the sleeve seam is going to be right here, and it's just going to hit the chubby part of the vinyl. And this is what their arms are like. The vinyl ends right here, but it actually, you know, they give them little biceps because babies are chubby. So it has to go over this chubby part and even like an even wider area of vinyl before it gets to the actual shoulder. So that's why, you know, depending on the doll that you're using, if you're not using a Bitty Baby doll, that's why with something like a jacket, I mean, they make these babies like a little muscle baby. But with a jacket, you have to, sometimes with these, make adjustments. So when we get to the part where we're putting the sleeves on, I'll show you more. See, the American Girl dolls, the larger dolls, they have different arms that don't bend quite like this. They're straight, and their shoulders are done differently. So this is kind of a whole different story, and yet we're trying to use a pattern on all these different dolls or rabbits. The rabbits are easy because their arms are stitched on. And my handmade, my knit doll, 18-inch doll, her arms are stitched on, so that's a whole different thing. Okay, now to stitch the back to the front at the shoulders, this is the back with the wrong side up, and these are right sides together with the front and the back. You want to pin or mark 1.5 inches in from each edge, and also pin down the back edge. So usually when you're going through a machine, it'll go this way. So you're going to stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance to the pin or the marking that you have, and then turn the back under like that and stitch, and make sure you move that whole front piece out of the way. So once you get to the 1.5 inch in mark and you stitch to there, then move that out of the way, turn this under a bit to go around the back till you get to the next pin mark. And then once you get to the pin mark, put the front down flat again and do it that way. So I've stitched that first 1.5 inches. I've moved the front piece out of the way now, and I'm just going to continue stitching along the back all the way down here until I get to the next pin mark, and at that point I will be sewing from that 1.5" mark pin to the edge together. But make sure that you don't include this. So just keep it all separate, and you're really, you're not finishing this top edge at this point in the front. Okay, so here it is at that point, stitched. And that can just sit there for a minute, because now we're going to do something a little different with the sleeves. This is right side up, and we are going to take it and fold it twice, with each of those folds being 1 inch. It leaves a raw edge along this edge, and you see how you fold it once from the bottom in, and then fold it again to here. And then you're going to press that and use a zigzag to go right down here and right down there. And what that's going to do, that obviously shortens the sleeve, and when it gets attached to the sweater, it will be a shorter sleeve. It'll be held in place with zigzag. And I actually like some raw stitching or raw edges left on doll clothes, because they should be loved and worn. You know, you should drag your doll around with you everywhere, so that like I said in one of my other videos, you create a history with it. So a lot of people don't do that, especially if you are a doll collector or something. But I like to leave a raw edge so that even if you wash the clothes, you get a little bit of a worn look. But anyway, so fold it up twice by 1 inch, and let me just measure that again. Yeah, 1 inch. And then we'll be attaching the, with the finished edge on the bottom, we'll then be sewing them to the top and back pieces. But fold it twice like this, and zigzag that edge, and zigzag this edge. Okay, so there we are with the sleeves shortened. And this is the layout. All of these are right sides up. So the next step is this top sleeve edge needs to be centered on each side, and then you pull it over like this so that right sides are together, and stitch the sleeve in place. And this is where you need to make sure you don't wander all over the place, and you want to keep it a narrow 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then when that one's done, you do the same thing on this side. Okay, the sleeves are stitched on there now, as you can see. And what I'm checking right now is where the shoulders sit. Because if these pull in at all, that's going to make it more difficult to get the arm in. So now, the next step, and I'll take it off of here, is fold it right sides together, lining the sides up and the sleeves up, and just stitch each side and sleeve starting at the cuff and down to here. Now this will have like 2 or 3 layers, and you may get a little bit of a drag getting that underneath the zigzagger on the machine. So it might be better this time to start at this edge, line this up, pin the 2 bottoms of the arm together at this point, pin them together here, and start here and go this way, so that this is at the end, and the majority of the seam will have been done. So start here go up here and down that way. Then if you run into a problem with this not going under the zigzag easier, you'll have more to kind of coax it from the back. Okay, finally I have one that fits a bitty baby. So, and the sleeves don't have to be rolled up. And you can use many different fabrics. Now, the neckline is not finished. And there are two options here, and I'm gonna just put it down like this for a minute. You can do two things. A little bit of a challenge with learning the zigzagger and the automatic zigzagger would be to turn this upper edge under and start here and go all the way around the neck in a zigzag. And that will put a border all the way around the neck, but it'll also turn under your raw edges that are on the front. The other option is to take a piece of ribbon and place it evenly with the raw edge on the right side, and just stitch down the center of the ribbon to attach it all the way around the neck, but leave long tails so that you can tie it together. So finally I can make little jackets for the bitty babies. Lots of room in the arm. This has a onesie on. I could easily fit a shirt in there. Lots of room. And lots of room under here to get it on there. So there is a simple 4-square jacket for the American Girl bitty baby. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put ribbon at the top. And I'm not going to try and zigzag it. I could, but I'm just going to do it straight stitch and put it on there. You need 9 inches, about 9 inches to go around the neck. What I did was pin, I only have like maybe 25 inches of yellow ribbon here. And so what I did was pin it here and pin it here, and obviously around the neck. I left the rest long, and now with the machine on straight stitch, I'm just going to stitch around the entire neck and let the ribbon be the edging for the neck. And then that gives you 2 ties as well. The reason I'm not going to do the zigzag is because I'm not sure all of this will go under the presser foot. Let's see how it fits under there first. Now, it fits under there fine. The zigzagger doesn't like to go over pins. So I'm tacking it to the one edge I'm starting at with a straight stitch. What I'm not comfortable with right now is feeling that my zigzag stitch, with the way the fabric moves here, is going to be perfectly straight. Let's try it. The ribbon is narrow. No, I'm going to do straight stitch. Because if I'm off on the zigzag, it's really going to show up. If I'm off on the straight stitch with this, you know, it's just it's straight stitch sewing. So I won't really be off. But the zigzag, because of the way the fabric moves, I haven't used this in a long time. So I want to get some practice in before I just go ahead and finish this edge with the zigzag. Now, I want to make sure this is going to move through, because I could always take the zigzagger off of there and just do straight stitch. There's a little bump to the end of the ribbon, probably because I did a little bit of backup stitching. And see how I still have to manipulate this to keep it straight. And so I just would rather get a little bit more practice under my belt here before I do zigzag and ribbon on an edge that is really going to be noticeable on an item. Excuse my hand. And this is the seam allowances of the sleeve that it's having a little bit of trouble going over. And if I had one of my other machines handy, I could just do the straight stitch on one of the other machines. Yeah, see, it doesn't want to move over multiple seam allowances very easily. Of course, that might go easier if I didn't have it set still at 30 stitches an inch. If I had it at like 8 or 10 stitches an inch, I'd probably be zipping right along. So this is good practice. It's good practice for the zigzagger. It's good practice to learn the best ways to get it to accept 2 or 3 seam allowances. Maybe they all have to be pressed open. It's like so easy to slide off the edge, though. And I don't know why that is, except that it's got to be just the way that the feed dogs, well, the presser foot clamps down on the fabric over the feed dogs. Now that didn't come out too bad. It's not perfectly even, and it would have been more difficult with the zigzag. But it didn't come out too bad, and it puts a nice little top edge around the whole thing. So let me just put it on the doll again. And I put the shirt back on the doll. So we'll see how this goes right on over the shirt. Now, I have to admit, it's probably going to be my bunny that gets this jacket. but only because of the fabric. It matches the pants I made. So now, you see how it pulls a little bit? And that's because you can't really, with the zigzagger on there, you can't really bend the ribbon that way and catch the bottom edge of it. I could catch that by hand and just pull it down a little bit with a needle and a thread. But it goes on over the shirt, no problems on the arms. It is an open jacket, not a closing jacket. But I'm thinking this would look so cute in like denim, like a very lightweight denim, or if you wanted to be more traditional, you know, like a plaid fabric, would almost look like a plaid blanket type thing. And see, this is already fraying, which is kind of what I wanted. I wanted them to look like comfortable, good old dolls, and not necessarily as if I paid $100 for the outfit, which I haven't done yet, but, you know, that's never ruled out. But anyway, there it is. So now we have a jacket pattern for a bitty baby.